This is the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. How you doing? Probably better than you think. Did you ever wonder why people who have suffered the most tragedy, who have overcome the most insurmountable odds, are often the ones who are the most positive? It's crazy, right? Christy Mandigo is an aerospace engineer in San Pedro, California. She has cerebral palsy and grand mal seizures, along with 24 other conditions, but she manages to keep moving. How does she do it, people ask? She answers in her book, Ask Why, but not why me.
There was a lot of individuals at my company, but also externally, that asked how I get up in the morning, how I live with all of my conditions. And I started getting requests to speak, and I got requests to do articles in magazines. And it just inspired me to start writing a book.
And you're like a super genius, I'm imagining.
Well, I do have a somewhat photographic slash iconic memory. So yes, I can catalog, and I am obviously I'm a mechanical engineer, and I have constantly been in pursuit of making sure that the world is better, and digital twin type of technology. Who I am is a compilation of having seizures and knowing how to project manage myself. So most people don't have those ailments or challenges. And so I naturally have a project management methodology. Getting up every day is not an easy task. I just was in the hospital for some testing, and it put me in a wheelchair for a little while. And so I had additional challenges. And it's not the first time it's happened. This is a, repetitive thing that will always continue to happen. Not to say that it's, a foregone conclusion, but it's always something that is a possibility.
It makes you think about, people who just can't get out of bed. They're healthy, two arms, two legs, If you can do it, I can do it. Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Yeah, so my book is about inspiration and how it's something that I struggle with, but I get up every day, and I have learned to ask for help, and I've learned to acknowledge my strengths and weaknesses, and not hide behind the truth of what I need and who I am. So it's something that a lot of people don't learn at an early age. They retire with it.
Well, you don't have to.
Right. And you don't have to, and it's scary, and I get that, and it's scary sometimes to show vulnerability, but I've learned that being vulnerable, it gives you strength, and it gives you power to be able to understand where you're coming from, and it gives you great opportunities and possibilities of just for me as an engineer, I have learned how I've written patents, and some of them haven't gone through, some of them are in the process, and it's because I see the world in a different way. I see the possibilities of how people learn, how people struggle, how many people, I don't have problems with color blindness, but I'm aware of it. I know that the color red is a struggle for people, and a lot of people don't speak up and say, "Hey, I can't see red." And they struggle through their workday not being able to see the color red. And there in engineering, we have something that's called red lines. And so we have learned, at least at our company, that a lot of our training doesn't have red lines. They're different colors. They're a color that they can see. And part of that is because I've spoken up, And I say, no, we have to have another way. And we need more people that are willing to speak up and be vulnerable and recognize that they might ruffle some feathers along the way.
I mean, do you feel, a real purpose in your life?
I feel opportunities and purpose that will give me strength in knowing that I'm helping other people. I may not be helping myself all the time, but I help other people recognize their potential.
And what's better than that, Christy? Thank you. Dr. Murray Sabrin taught finance at Ramapo College in New Jersey, and as soon as he retired in 2020, he started writing Universal Medical Care from Conception to End of Life, the case for a single payer system. And what a mess we have in this country when it comes to medical care. How do you solve it?
What I do in this book, Alice, is very simple. There are four components to what I'm offering, which is a universal medical care system based upon a single payer, the single payer being the individual or the family, as opposed to the government, which is what Bernie Sanders wants. So the four components is what I grew up with in the 1950s when my parents took me to the doctor, where you'd make a cash payment to the doctor for an office visit. And then if you got a prescription, you take that prescription to the local pharmacy and you paid cash for the drugs that you needed, the prescription that you needed. And then in 1961, my father had a major operation in Manhattan, and he was a blue collar worker. He had Blue Cross Major Medical, and it paid for the hospital stay and the operation. And I don't recall the family agonizing over any medical bills that were not covered by insurance. The third one is the catastrophic coverage for major illnesses like my father's operation or people who have long-term chronic conditions. So the other thing would be health savings accounts where people would put money in tax free and then it would be taken out tax free. And the purpose of that would be to pay for the more expensive medical treatment. And the fourth component, which I think is really critical, is the nonprofit medical centers. I helped create one in northern New Jersey based upon the volunteers in medicine model that was created in Hilton Head, South Carolina in the mid 90s. And this is totally voluntary people. Some of them are paid. Patients don't pay anything. It's based upon having a low income that would allow you to qualify for quote membership. And I throw down the gauntlet in this book and saying that all the super wealthy people like Bill and Melinda Gates and their foundation, which has tens of billions of dollars, Jeff Bezos, that's worth nearly $200 billion, they literally could create enough nonprofit medical centers to eliminate the Medicaid budget, which is around $800 billion a year, saving the American taxpayer a ton of money. So all the components of transitioning from where we are today to a universal care system without government money, which is really taxpayer money, and having the super system that would give us quality health care and at lower cost. In fact, I estimate that the $4 trillion that the American people will spend in 2021 for medical care can be reduced by probably 50%. And I'll give you two examples of that, of how that could be done. One is I attended a conference several months ago, and there was a vice president of human resources who told me that his company was tired of all these high cost insurance plans. So they brought in a truck with a MRI. The MRI cost $400 per employee, and that same truck went down the street to a hospital, and the hospital charged $5,000 for that MRI. Shows you the inflated cost of using traditional medical providers. And this is an example of how we can reduce medical costs by having direct payment between the individual or the company and the provider. Another great example is a direct primary care doctor right here in Southwest Florida, who I interviewed for my book, who told me a story of one of her patients who didn't have insurance, traditional insurance, and he needed an operation. He contacted a local hospital. The local hospital quoted him $20,000. His direct primary care physician said, "You've got to call the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. They're a cash payment surgery center." He called them up. The cost of the operation, the transportation to Tulsa, Oklahoma. The stay in the hotel was $5,000. That's a 75% discount from where he would have paid if he could for that $20,000 operation. So the point of these two anecdotes is that there's a lot of inflated costs in our system. And if we got those costs down by direct payment and health savings plan and catastrophic insurance, we could solve the mess that we're in today by getting high quality care at a much lower cost than today.
Exactly. So how are you getting that message out there?
Well, I've been working with Talkers Magazine and a publicist to get the message out through talk radio. I've been writing articles about it, and so that's how we get the message out. Because there's a huge audience in America, more than 200 million adults who are decision makers regarding medical care, plus all the employers in the country. So my goal is to have this book in the hands of as many people as possible, in order for us to have a national debate, finally, a national discussion of how we can change the current system that is not change for the sake of change, but change for the sake of providing universal care at low cost and high quality.
All right, you got my vote, Murray. Thank you. Dennis Brown loved communicating with his brother through short stories for years, and now he's put them together for his book, Stories from a Sideways Glance.
They all have kind of an extra piece to them, which is a spiritual piece. And whether people believe in that or not, and whether that was part of what they learned out of the story, that's up to them. But there's always a piece in there that's a mystical or spiritual piece. One of the examples is a girl got away from her parents. They were up walking through the woods, and she got lost in the woods. At the same time, a criminal with a very bad history broke out of jail and was in the same woods. So as the story progresses, they have people out searching for the girl and for the criminal. And as it turns out, the criminal comes face to face with the girl and decides that he's going to take her out because that's part of his mentality. And a group of wolves gather and come around the girl to protect her and go after him. The criminal assumed that the wolves were going to eat the little kid, and they protected the little kid and went after the criminal. And in the end, her last words were, "The doggies saved me. The doggies helped me."
Is that a true story?
No, but doesn't it sound like it could be?
It does.
So all of my stories have that element in it that you just asked about.
Are any of the stories true?
They're true to my brain, but not true to the writings. They're all fictional.
Do they all have a happy ending?
All except one in the book. The one that doesn't have a happy ending, if people think it out, they understand why it doesn't have a happy ending. But that's up to the people who are reading it.
Obviously, you want people to think about these stories.
Absolutely. I want them to think. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want them to think in terms of their own lives, their own experiences, their faith?
All of those. But it has to be theirs because they're the ones interpreting what's being written. And if they decide to write it off, then they're not going to think about it in terms of what's possible out there and things that happened, whether they consider them real or coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. So that's probably one of my slants in here, is that when things happen that intercede, if they don't see that as an intercession from somewhere, then they've closed off to the possibilities.
That's interesting because, there are some people who just can't grasp the idea that maybe things do happen for a reason. And maybe there is, a path and things are meant to happen a certain way at a certain time. And
yes.
So this book will make believers out of them, right? Am I right?
Well, I hope so. If you know what, if they take the time to think it through, and what's the lesson? There's a lesson everywhere. So if they take the time to find what's the lesson for them, then they will have advanced themselves. So we should write a story about COVID and the lessons that should be learned out of it. But
I strongly support that. I think that's something we need desperately. Keep the focus off the politics and on the lessons we can learn.
Isn't that the truth? There is no truth in politics. So the lesson learned is don't look for truth in politics.
Got that right, Dennis. Thank you. Rob Turner is a mechanical engineer. He designs HVAC systems for commercial buildings, and he's got some free advice in his book, The Homeowner's Guide to HVAC, The Envelope, and Green Technologies.
It's about making the right decisions. There's so much information out there, oh, we save you 75% on your power bill. Well, those are under the best conditions with sometimes unfair comparisons. And what I try to do is tell people what really is a good green piece of equipment to have and what really does make a big difference in your power bill and lowering your energy usage.
Okay, so one of the things you talk about is cooling our homes and how expensive that is. So there's got to be something better than window air conditioners, right?
Oh, yes, definitely. Okay, the window air conditioner, it works, it's just not very efficient, and it only blows air in one direction into one room. The next step up is a ducted split system. That's what's most common. Those are good because they come in a variety of efficiencies. You describe the efficiency with the SEER rating, SEER, Seasonal Energy Efficiency Rating. And it goes from 14 to like 21. And you can think of it like miles per gallon in your car. The 21 SEER units are awesome, but they're significantly more expensive. And, there's so many choices for air conditioning your house. But the ducted systems, they are limited because you get one thermostat for one ducted system. So a lot of people with larger homes, they'll purchase 3 or 4 ducted systems, so they have 3 or 4 thermostats. And then the next step up from that is it's called VRF equipment. It's the most common one is the Mitsubishi mini splits. There's a lot of choices in that family. It's not just the wall hung unit. There's a ceiling cassette, there's ducted units, floor console, and those give you a real thermostat with each unit you buy. So you could put a wall hung unit in every room, and every bedroom would have its own thermostat, which is exceptional comfort. That's kind of like the quick story of the range of different choices you have. But there's other choices, like heating water is an enormous amount of energy. It's a large part of your power bill. You have 3 types of water heaters: electric, gas, and heat pump. Heat pump is the newest technology, and it is by far the best way to heat water, in my opinion. They are more expensive, but their prices are coming way down. The heat pump water heater is at least 4 times as efficient as electric. So that's a huge increase in efficiency. So I would say heat pump water heaters is highly recommended. Another thing you can do to be green is look at your envelope. It's in the title of the book, and not everybody knows what the envelope is. The envelope is your insulation barrier that goes all the way around the house. And the idea is to have it surround your house like a cooler around drinks and ice. And you can have lots of holes in the envelope. You can have patches of insulation missing in your attic. Buy more insulation and patch the holes and cracks and crevices around windows and things like that. Because a missing patch of insulation in your attic, for example, is not just kind of a hole in the perimeter. It lets heat in the summertime, or lets heat out in the wintertime, like a hole in a bucket of water. It gushes out. So looking after your envelope is super important and can save a lot of money.
All right, Rob. So many choices, so little time. Thank you. An educator in St. Louis, soon to become a music teacher, but a writer at heart. Evelyn Johnson did her master's in theater, where her dean encouraged her to publish her thesis, Spiritual Man, Natural Woman.
I was in a class with one of my professors, and they were discussing theories on why people actually write. And we were discussing women's theory. She asked me if I was a feminist. but I didn't feel like I fit into the feminism that was being described. So I wrote Spiritual Man, Natural Woman so that I could explain where I feel feminism is safest for me. The book is a study guide, so I took a little time to research women of the Bible, the creation story, and I kind of pulled some things out that helped solidify my identity with just being a woman or feminism. So I give a list of scriptures in the beginning. Genesis 1 says, in the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. And then verse 2 says, male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. So this is just one of many scriptures that I expound on throughout the book, not necessarily telling people what it means, but just giving them an idea on the understanding that I'm getting as I'm reading. And the fact is, the title Spiritual Man, Natural Woman comes from this specific scripture because spiritually we are equal. We were all created spiritually as Adam. The Most High never differentiated. So when he created us in the concrete or the natural realm, we were created with specific functions. The Father is the giver of seed. The Holy Spirit is the one that multiplies the seed. The Son is offspring and also heir to the throne. So then we see the concept of the male and the female in the natural and being made in his image and after his own likeness, where the male takes on the seed giving, the female takes on the receiving of the seed and the multiplying of it. And this is in its simplicity, the sexuality of us, which we still have the same purpose, but our function is a little different when it comes to the reproductive system. And that's about it for real. And I see a lot of women when I'm speaking with them and I touch on the matter of being the weaker vessel, they really get upset about that. And it's like, you guys, it's not saying we're not as important. What it's saying is in the concrete, in the natural realm, our purpose with our cycles, we need to take it easy. And we joke a lot. I say, hey, we could probably get paid for 3 weeks worth of work and get paid on that fourth month if we really would hone in on how important being and sacred being a woman is in our society. When I originally wrote the book, I was taking it into women's Bible studies, talked to the women about it in prison. I was doing the prison ministry before it shut down, going into the shelters and reading to the ladies in the shelters. I think I've had enough time to see how people are receiving it. I think I can go ahead on and open it up to the masses and pray that it will bring unity amongst all of humanity, and especially unity amongst women. Because I touch on that in the book. We have to be mindful on how we're treating and respecting each other as well if we're hoping to, I guess, obtain that respect from our male
I
counterparts.
agree completely, Evelyn. Thank you. Finally, T. Michael Griffin retired from UPS 5 years ago and started to write about something he knows more about than he is willing to let on: the hidden reality, a science fiction.
I just started writing it, and it just started developing. I have a main character, yes.
What's his name?
There's no name to it. He doesn't have a name.
Okay. Well, here's what I have. This book is about a man who experiences two lifetimes, one of them in another place and time period with life forms he encounters.
Well, that's pretty much the essence of the book.
When you say he experiences two different lifetimes, what do you mean by that?
Well, he has a chance to go into another lifetime. He has worked for the government. He was able to go back to his earlier years, and this is because of alien technology. He was able to do this with the government's cooperation. So he was able to go back to his early 20s, and with that and other favors he did for the government, met life forms, and things opened up to him in his new life a lot because his psychic ability had increased, and he was able to pick up on the life forms on Earth, and he could read thoughts and keep up with them like that pretty much because he had the ability to be able to pick up on them and find out certain things. And he just kept learning, and the more he got into it, the better he got, and the more he got. a lifetime 200,000 years ago, which was a great time for him. He met a girl that he eventually married, and she was pretty psychic, but he had some help. He had extraterrestrial help, and he had somebody who was looking after him during this whole thing. He went back in time and stayed there, yeah, and he was pretty much going to live out his life there, but they wanted him back because they needed some special help that he could give. Well, they wanted to retrieve him, but the book ended before he did, because he was able to get some word from this extraterrestrial that told him what was going on, and told him that he needed to kind of hide out a little bit, or they were going to pull him back. So he gave him some help, but he couldn't write anymore because all of the writing the experiences that he had would trace him down, because he had a psychic. They were closing in on him, a good friend he was relating all this information to in the present. And he was told that if he kept this up, they were going to find him out and jerk him back to the present. So he stopped writing, and that's kind of where the story stopped. I was afraid, really, if I wrote this in a nonfiction, that somebody might come looking for me.
Why would you think that?
Well, the things that I put in the book are real. I got them under science fiction, but these things are happening now.
How do you know?
I can't tell you that, because if I did, I would.
You can't tell me how you know?
Well, I was in tune with it, and I did some help. I got pretty close to it, and found out a little bit more than maybe I should have at the start. So anything I write about it, I'm going with just science fiction.
All right, T. Michael Griffin. You know, you're just making us more curious now, which, I don't know, it's probably not a bad idea if you think about it. You know, makes people want to go out and buy the book. All right, that is it for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Let me remind you, you can find all of the books that we talked about on this show and every show on Amazon, Apple iTunes. Just go to pagepublishing.com or Google the book title or the author or both. And if you need to refresh your memory, just go to 710WOR.com. Download the podcast. We post a new one every week. All right? Thanks for listening. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. I'll catch you next time.